Welcome back to another episode of the Awakening Woman podcast. I'm Florence, your host, and this is season 2, where we explore the wisdom of women who are changing the world from the inside out. My guest today is Ana Flores, founder, community builder, writer, and creator of Done with the Hustle and Her Wisdom Era. When I first came across Ana's writing on Substack, what struck me wasn't her success story, it was her honesty. In this conversation, Ana shares her journey from building one of the largest communities for Latina women in the United States to making the difficult decision to let go of the company she spent 14 years nurturing. But this isn't really a conversation about business. It's a conversation about what happens when the things you've spent years nurturing no longer need you in the same way. The freedom, the grief, the possibility that can emerge when you finally ask, who am I now? We explore identity, belonging, trust, midlife reinvention, and the courage it takes to release what once defined you in order to return to yourself. I enjoyed this conversation immensely, and I hope you do too.
Thank you for having me here, Florence. I love that. Yeah, we connected on Substack, I think, early last year, very early on in my Substack days. And that's what I love the most about Substack is just the way that I've been able to expand my community and my relationships with women that love to go deep. So that's me. I love to go deep. I was actually born in Texas, grew up in El Salvador. So I am a completely bilingual, bicultural Latina. And I mentioned that because that has shaped my identity, but beyond that, everything I have put out into the world. I am a content creator. I started out as a TV producer, studied that in college. So that has always been my calling. And I've always been creating content for Latinos in the US and across the diaspora in Latin America as well. So looking things like MTV Latin America, Univision, and then going into the world of mom blogging when I have my daughter who's now 18 and about to go to college in London. So that is very exciting for us. And I really am a community architect. I am a founder and a person who loves to bring visibility to women, and really to Latina women. So my last company was We All Grow Latina. I led that, founded it 2010, led it for 14 years. It started out as the first influencer marketing agency for Latinas in the world. Influencer marketing wasn't even the term that we used. We were a blogger network because it was so early on that the word influencer wasn't even used yet. But that really grew into a community. After 6 years of running it, self-funded, hit our first $1 million within a few years, which is huge because Latina founders in the US, it's only about 1% of us that ever reached the $1 million mark. So that was really big. I let go of everything influencer marketing and really focused on building the community. And that's when we rebranded into We All Grow because our motto was when one grows, we all grow. And I still continue creating from that place. I let go of the company last year with the social, economic, political environment in the US. It was just possible to continue going. And we did a fire sale, found a beautiful Latina-led nonprofit who is now shepherding the legacy of We All Grow. At the time we sold it, we had over 40,000 members in our free app, which was called the Amigahood. We really were and still are about connecting women at that deep level of what friendship brings to where we can support each other when we really believe in each other. And that's really sometimes all we need, right? Just that belief that if you can do it, I can do it, and that somebody else can hold me in the process. And now I just this week launched my newest project called Her Wisdom Era. to conversations and community for Latinas in midlife. So always creating from that stage of life in which I am in so that I can show up with lived experience with that embodied wisdom, if you may. And we just launched that as a podcast and as a Substack and Instagram this week.
Wow, there's so much there. And I definitely want to get into that because when you talk, I do hear how much love you have for your Latina sisters. I think as somebody from Europe, I don't have the insider knowledge of the experience of Latin women in the States. When I think of Latin women, my mind goes to Europe, maybe Spain, Portugal, and then maybe South America, Central America. But obviously, that's a different lived experience. So when you talk about your Latina sisters and amigahood, I love that, by the way. That is just such a fun play on words. I love it.
I have a knack for words and coming up
Yeah,
with
yeah, that's so
brand
beautiful.
names.
I really do hear like that sistership and that desire for just uplifting your community and women from your lineage or that from your cultural background. But I'm curious, is this only something that you see within the US? And you mentioned the diaspora. Does it infiltrate to other groups of who would describe themselves as Latin women as well, maybe from Spain, Portugal?
Yeah, exactly. So, gosh, we're such a diverse group
Mm,
that it is always really hard. One of the challenges that we see even here in the political arena in the United States is just how hard it is to bring us all together. And the marketers and the politicians really try to talk to us as if we're just one big,
mm,
where we are such a diverse block. We Latinas can be Black, they can be Asian, they come from completely very European white, right? We come from such a diverse of all these different countries that make up what is Latin America. And then we expanded into Hispanic, which would include Spain, right? So what unites us with Spain is the language. But what unites us as Latinos is that there is this, we're the colonized, right? We're the colonized community that is made up of the colonizers and the colonized. It's this very mixed heritage.
mm,
So we are a complicated group. And once we leave our countries of origin, or like me, that I grew up in the States, but I was born in the States, but I grew up in El Salvador in Central America. My dad still lives in Houston. So I spent my whole life coming back and forth. Right?
mm,
But when I lived in El Salvador, I was Salvadorian.
mm,
I did not consider the term even Latina wasn't really there. You become a Latina once you leave your country of origin and you're still looking for that identity, cultural hug, that embrace that understands you. And even though we're so diverse, we're so different, we have things beyond the language that unite us because yes, Spanish is a language that unites us, but there's also among Latinas Brazilian that speak Portuguese.
mhm,
Right? There's also indigenous women that speak their languages of origin, Cachiquel, Maya, etc. There's so many nuances, but there is this overlaying like cultural, I don't know, sabor, flavor, or something that we grew up listening probably to the same song. Our parents grew up partying the same way and making certain like they would party our night and we would have to be there while they're partying. And then eventually we would go to sleep in the little chair. And that's what Bad Bunny depicted in his Super Bowl performance. Those signals that we understand. There's so many things that unite us. We grew up watching the same shows, probably coming from Mexico or from Argentina or Colombia. So once we leave, we tend to create spaces where we find each other. And that's what happened when I went to college in Texas. Again, my dad still lives in Houston. I started my college in Austin, Texas, and then I moved to Florida. I was always within the Latino group. I didn't join in any sororities or clubs or anything. We just all came together. We would just always find each other. I think that was always my experience being, um, we say in Spanish, de aquí y de allá, a little bit from here and a little bit from there. We can be in another country. We can move to England. We can move to the US, to Australia, wherever it may be, but we're never going to let go of who we are. And that's so important. And I think these spaces that I continue to create are to welcome those people. And then there's a whole other layer to this, if I can keep going, which is the Latinos born in the US that they might not speak Spanish. They were probably the border crossed them because there's Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, were all Mexico at one point. And when in the late 1800s, when those parts of Mexico, territories of Mexico were won by the United States, from one day to the next, the border changed, and they were all of a sudden no longer Mexican. They had to assimilate directly into being United States. I don't say Americans because America's the whole continent. They had to assimilate to be citizens of the United States. A lot of these people might have assimilated, most of them by force and by scare tactics, right? To have to assimilate to speak English only. That's a really big deal in this country. So to speak English only, so they might have let gone or their language, and they didn't teach it to their children and the next generations. They never let go of the culture. And that presents itself in the food and the way we celebrate and the music. Right? All of that kept going. So you have this whole community of Latinos in the US that don't speak the language, that many times felt left out. They're like, I can't watch. My parents were watching Univision shows, and I grew up watching Sábado Gigante or whatever these shows, but I never understood it, but it's part of who I am. Or I grew up listening to Celia Cruz, Mark Anthony, whatever it may be, but it's part of my culture, but I don't identify because I don't speak the language. So a lot of what happened with We All Grow Latina was that we would constantly get people that would join and tell us like, I live in little town, Wisconsin, and I don't have Latinas, and I didn't feel Latina. I didn't even identify it, but I found you guys, and my whole culture, like the way I grew up and everything came back to me. And this is where I feel I belong. Like it was almost like I had to let go of this part of me to assimilate, to belong into this other communities, but into the majority, quote unquote, while realizing that I can't let go of who I am. So we would have constantly women that would be like, maybe even adopting their maiden name again, that was Gonzalez or Martinez or something, and being proud of it and being like, you know what, I am a Latina. This makes me whole now. That's really, I hope I explained a little bit.
Yeah, you did. No, that sounds really important. I can imagine how healing that would be. Yeah. So like this idea of like community and belonging and identity seems to go through your work just generally. You touched a little bit about how you felt that this was important for your own business evolution, but can you talk about it a bit more generally, why you think identity and belonging and community are important ingredients for women in business?
Ooh, that's been such a journey, because we're entering, at least when I entered the business world 15 years ago, the business world did not look like me. There weren't models that I could look at, women that I could identify with. And that doesn't mean that there probably weren't women in C-suite levels or women founders, but a lot of those women founders, and I do not blame them, had to really put on the male suit and really to be able to be taken seriously by the gatekeepers and by the people who control the funding, the capital, and the money. We have to remember, at least in the United States, it was only in 1954, I believe, I'm bad with actual dates and hello midlife, that women were allowed to have their own checking account. Talk about financial power, right? If it's only been 50 years ago, that means that my mother probably was one of the first generations to be able to access, to have her own financial means to her. And that's empowerment. That's real power. So we're coming still from just a few generations back where women have had any sorts of rights. And we're now in a moment where so much of those rights are being taken away, especially when it comes to our body and our autonomy. So imagine in business when we're entering a world that is ruled by men, that is ruled by the masculine, And we are being told that to be able to be part of that world, we have to let go of what is seen as soft skills. Don't bring your intuition. Don't tell me about your feelings. Don't be too emotional. So you feel constantly as an imposter, right? Which I hate that imposter syndrome because it's something that's been put upon us that we have to, because why we feel as imposters is because we're trying to enter a world that wasn't created with us in mind or wasn't created for us to succeed. So community is essential because we need to see other women that are creating from the same depths and from that place of emotions, softness, and intuition that many of us want to continue creating from. And that's why we're seeing the exhaustion, we're seeing the burnout, because we've been trying to exist within this container that, again, was not made for us, with these metrics that are just impossible to achieve, that we might see a few getting there, but all of the ones that have gotten there, which is the $1 million unicorn valuations, the selling your company for billions of dollars, et cetera, or making it to the top levels of the C-suite, about the burnout and needing to start over again from a different place. So we're capable of it. But do we belong in that space? I don't know, because I think with the opportunity for us and in coming into together in community is what's going to make it happen, is for us to imagine that there's a possibility of creating in a different way, of being in business in a different way. And it's together that we're going to make it.
Yeah. And I think there's something about this idea of if we can separate them, if we can separate women, if we don't allow them to come together, then they can't communicate, then they can't share ideas. We divide and conquer. But when women are able to come together, which is more and more of what I see happening now, when we're able to say, actually, this isn't okay, this is a problem, this isn't normal, let's think of a different way of going about it. That's actually how we create change. When we normalize difference, when we normalize the soft way that you mentioned, or another way of doing business, then we can show each other what else is possible rather than just going along with the way that it's always been done before.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And that's exactly dividing us and belittling us and making sure that we live in fear, women or any minoritized community. That is the way that playbook with it is done. That it's exactly what's part of the playbook. And the way that we resist is by being vulnerable, is by owning our truth and by coming together. And I think that to be able to come together in a really authentic way, we have to be okay with expressing the depth and the profoundness of who we are, the messy, right? We have to let go of that girl boss perfectionism and really express. And I know that you've been doing that with your Substack, and that's what Substack has allowed me to. When I let go of my business, I was seen as people thought I was a millionaire. People thought because my company was doing really well. And yes, within 14 years, we made over $20 million. And time I think back about that, and I'm like, that came from nothing. I didn't have a father that was backing me up or a mother. I don't have a trust fund. I made it happen out of sheer will and bringing together other women that believed in it, that were part of my team, and that we did this together. But it was out of nothing. And it broke apart because all of a sudden we have a precedent that said we do not want to invest. And actually had a mandate the first day he became precedent with an executive order that dismantled diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's what all of a sudden led to the fallout of the company, which had already been struggling since COVID. But again, I mentioned this because I was seen as this leader who had it all together, right? This beautiful company that always showed up in the best way, that we were polished, we were creating opportunities, we were just coming out of nowhere and just leading and constantly leading. We weren't celebrities, we weren't millionaires, nothing like that. And it happened. And then from one day to the next, people seeing that, how do I tell people that I'm in massive debt because of the company? How do I tell people that I am now on social benefits, what I'll call like food stamps, Medi-Cal, etc., because I have been paying into those social services for so many years, and I need time to recover from 14 years of running a business that by the end had already felt like a cage. So coming up and telling people this is the reality of business. Now that I lived through this all of last year and still am living with the repercussions. How do I warn people that what we have been pushing women for the empowerment and give it your all and go girl and girl boss, you can do it? What are the real risks behind this? There is no social net for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah. I do hear you. And I think this ties into your Substack. If correct me if I'm wrong, Done with the Hustle. I was so attracted to the name of the Substack when I found it. It says it all on the tin, doesn't it, really? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, of course. So funny that you mentioned the name. Thank you so much for doing that because I had to really put up a fight with my publisher. So the book is coming out next year in 2027, and they thought that the name was too negative, and I was like, absolutely not. Like people, this is exactly the feeling that people have right now, and I fought for that. So it's staying because I do agree with you. Like it says everything.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a moment come down to my knees and say, I am fucking done with the hustle. Like I can't do this anymore. I had to present a book proposal this 2018 to who are now my publishers, Harper One and HarperCollins Espanol. And I just couldn't feel that. I just did not have time to write a book. And I knew that I had it in me to write it. And I tried a ghostwriter, it just wasn't working out. And I kept pushing for this book. They wanted me to do the Latina manifesto, like Latinas in business. And I was like, that's not what needs to come out of me.
Mhm.
And I'm glad I didn't push it and I didn't force it. And then in 2023, I had brought it on board a co-CEO that year to support me with We All Grow because I was already feeling the disconnect. I was already feeling I am ready for something else, but this company needs to continue growing, but what it needs to grow is just something that I can't give anymore.
Mm.
I knew I needed to move. I had already let go of writing, and what started it all was a blog that I had early on called Spanglish Baby, and I was writing all the time. That's what started everything, and I let it go because I just couldn't exist in the co-parenting and running a business, a team of 20 people. Like it was a lot. And that year, I finally started creating more space for myself and I went on a self-imposed retreat. I just rented this house in this little beautiful magical town out here in Southern California called Ojai. And I gave myself a treat of 2 weeks because my daughter was, for the first time, I think she was 16, going on a month-long arts camp. And I was like, yes, what am I going to do? I have no excuse. This is the
Mm.
first time in 16 years that I can have time to myself. What am I going to do? So I was like, this is when you're going to create space for that book to come to you. But I really believe in being guided. And I've written about that before too. And more, I feel when manifestation, the way that it's been taught right now is so much about control,
Mhm.
about controlling what
Mhm.
we want to come to us instead of putting ourselves in that space to attract what is meant for us.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. And I went on this experiment of 2 weeks of I created the space for me to not even have to cook and just meditate and do yoga and write and be in nature and be in water the whole time. And I was like, I am coming out, like it will come to me. And within a week of being in that space of clarity and silence, it came to me and it literally downloaded Done with the Hustle. The words just came. And just a month before that, a month and a half, I had gotten COVID for the first time during a girls' trip in Oaxaca, like the day before it started. And I was already in Oaxaca, so I was alone in an Airbnb with my body just falling apart. I could feel that beyond COVID, what I was feeling was that I can't do this anymore. And I was on the floor, like, in my knees, crying, screaming, but screaming, I am done. I am done. Like, I just cannot do this. Show me the way. And a month later, again, I'm here, and that's what came through. And I knew that was the book. And then it just came fully formed. I was able, what I hadn't been able to do in 5 years, like it just poured through me. The introduction, the chapters, like all of it just started pouring out. And that was it. And then within a month, that's a whole other story, but my daughter and I were guided to move up to the mountains. We left LA. Um, and my daughter, there was an art school up here. So basically, I had been praying to find a way out of LA. And this was it. We both needed this. We're 2 hours from Malays, but we're in this beautiful little mountain village, little container, which was where I started writing the proposal and the book. And that led to the Substack. But really, throughout that whole moment, the moment I declared, and that's why the book really is a declaration. Done with the Hustle says it's a declaration that starts a ripple effect of things. The moment that you decide that something has to shift, the shift starts happening slowly. And that may look very terrifying, like it did for me, which meant the company started falling apart.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm done gripping. If it has to fall apart, if this is the way, if I'm not going to be the unicorn valuation and sell it for $1 million, if this is the story that has to happen, then let it be.
Wow. That's a really powerful place to be. I know, like in our previous conversation, we spoke a little bit, and I've seen it in your writing as well. You've spoken a little bit about like the sacrifice of choosing you, of choosing what is true for you. But also, I guess, like the gifts that you receive. You spoke and you wrote a post about your friend's birthday and what you received from that experience of being invited, and like the ways that you were supported to be able to go on that trip. Do you see that as part of the experience of learning to trust? What I would say, trust life. That's how I would say it. But I'm just curious to know, like, how
Yeah.
do you see it connecting at all?
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. That post that you're talking about was a trip that I did to Ecuador and Galapagos in January. My friend was turning 50 years old and she had invited us 2 years ago. She sent out the invitation and she's now living there. She wasn't when she sent out the invitation. And just being in that space, it was 40 people that flew out. And she's really well connected and has people, very wealthy friends, etc. From but with this very generous spirit. And it was during a time when I was going to cancel many times because I just feel, how can I afford that? And I felt guilty with my daughter having to go to college this year, and she deserves it. She's worked so hard to get to where she's at. So I was like, I can't do this trip. And every time I would say no, even internally, like a gift would come in from my friend who's such a generous spirit. She surrounds herself with other people that are generous spirit as well. And I would get an email from her being like, hey, do you want a room with so and this room is being subsidized in the Galapagos. So 5 days in the Galapagos cost me $300. Right? Like things like that. Or I wasn't going to go to one part of the trip because it was crazy expensive. And somebody 3 weeks before that, it was spending New Year's in the rainforest in Ecuador and like the crazy Michelin restaurant, a hotel. And he canceled and he was like, listen, I can't go, but it's already paid and I can't get a refund. I want you to enjoy, I want you to be with the friends that you love. And she asked me if I wanted to take a space, things like that. But if I would have said no from lack early on and not allow the experience to unfold and show me the mystery and the miracles that can happen when you say, okay, I trust that there's something here. And that I wrote that post because I always have a word of the year. And while I was there, it was already the new year. It was already 2026 or the first week. And I was like, I don't have my word of the year yet. Then I looked around and I kept seeing, I'm like, I am here in this magical place, a place that I had been wanting to come to my whole life at Galapagos. And I was barely here. I was there because of the generosity of people that didn't even know me.
Mm.
There was other people that supported in that trip. So it just showed me, and it was just this gift of honoring and being in gratitude and being, wow, there is so much generosity in the world. And that is the energy that I want to keep calling in for myself to receive and for myself to continue giving. And I also want to honor because we have a hard time, I'll speak for me, them saying, honoring my own gifts. And I know that I'm a generous person. And I know that everything that I have created has been from that spirit of generosity. So even though the company left me in debt, oh God, I'm going to get emotional saying this, but even though like I'm so broken financially because of the company, I feel that everything that I gave to that company, all those sacrifices and all those doors that were open, all those people connected, all of that is coming back, right? And is present, and it's what's sustaining my life. And it's those relationships, that network and that generous spirit that's just going to continue creating
That's
expansion.
That's so beautiful. I do hear the emotion in that, and I can't imagine how difficult as a single mom doing all of that to support yourself and your daughter, and you're doing such amazing work in the world supporting other women as well who are so often overlooked. And I do hear what you're saying. There's something like, I guess for me, it feels like you spent such a long time nurturing a child, your business, a child, 14 years, and then the courage to say, actually, I've given all that I can give to it now. And if I want it to go on the next leg of its journey, somebody else needs to take over and I need to give to myself now. I've got to listen to myself. And I feel like that was like maybe a journey that you had to go on for yourself.
Yeah, along with that came a huge sense of freedom and relief. And I had to mourn, and that started when I was in those 2 weeks in Ojai. I started mourning my daughter and I started mourning the company. My daughter was born in 2008. The company was born in 2010. I've really been shepherding, holding, guiding both of them. And when I started mourning my daughter and grieving that part was the relationship that we had where I knew she didn't need me as a mother in the same way that she had needed me when she was little. She was 16 already. She just needed somebody to hold her in the moments that she needs holding, to guide her when she needs and requests the guidance. I didn't need to continue doing everything for her. And it was the same thing that was happening with the company. And I started just releasing both of them in that way, being like, okay, I gave, like you said, gave everything. And I am proud of what both became. And I release you both into the world, into whatever you need to become now. And even with the company, it's beautiful because Patricia, the executive director of the nonprofit who bought it, she is constantly inviting me to things, constantly like giving me space to be recognized always as the founder. So she'll come to me. I'm part of the advisory board. So it's like I'm there if they need me, but I'm it's not mine anymore. It's and again, my daughter's heading out to London in a few months. So what opened up for me was like a space of freedom. I'm about to turn 54 in a few weeks, and I am reinventing my life. I'm choosing. And that's also why I don't have a man in my life right now. Because you're like, I want to choose for me. I don't want to choose for anybody or anything. I've worked so hard to let go of all the things right now to be back to this place of who is Anna? What does Anna really want to say, to do, to become? I only want to act right now, at least, take these next steps just fully for my own inner guidance.
And it's an adventure. You don't know where you're going to end up, right?
And I love it. I love not knowing. I know people are scared of that. And for me, it's, oh no, that's life. Like opening myself up to crazy possibilities. I love that.
Mm. Is there anything that you would like to share with the women who are listening to this? Your new platform is She's in Her Wisdom Era. Is that correct?
Her wisdom
Her
era.
Wisdom Era. So the name suggests that there's a lot of wisdom to share. So I guess one of the things that has stood out for me from one of your recent posts on Substack is that everything that you've created has come from your lived experience. You know, that it's been you giving back from your wisdom, from where you are. Yeah. So saying that, is there anything you want to share with maybe women who are listening who thinking, wow, you've been on such a journey, or maybe there's something that you want to speak to around trust or intuition or being a woman in business? It's up to you.
Oh, thank you. Really, as I was hearing you speak, I was like, okay, what really wants to come through? And what kept coming to me was don't rush.
Mm-hmm.
Do not follow anybody else's timeline. We are existing in a time and space right now where everything is about How quick are you to respond? How many courses can you take? How much output can you put out? How can you perform in different ways? And we feel that everything needs to be done now because we feel the competition and we see it every time we open up any of our apps, like what those timelines are telling us. And really, the only timeline that matters is the one that's internal, and we can't access that one if we are rushing. So take the time to honor the space that you need to hear yourself. And it can start with little pauses, little tiny pauses every day, and just breathing a few times and being like, okay, what am I feeling right now? What is my body telling me? Do I need to take a little 5-minute walk? Do I just need to go prepare a tea? Do I need to call a friend? Do I need to take a nap? I know taking a nap is really hard for me, but I say it. What is it that I need in this moment? Just put on a dance and just shake it off. But whatever it may be, take those little moments, because what happens is that when we just start creating telling our brain that those moments matter to us, they start expanding. That it's just the presence of that pause starts becoming something present in our life that we don't even have to try so hard for, right? They just start expanding and expanding. And in those little precious moments is when we can hear ourselves and know what the next step is. Don't look outside, just look inside.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Anna. So where can we find you?
So many places now. My main is definitely my Substack, Done with the Hustle, at substack.com. We just launched Her Wisdom Era. It is, yes, it is for Latinas in midlife, but really it is Latina forward. The conversations that we're having there are for any women in midlife that are tired of hearing that we are supposed to start fading away, that our best years are over, when in reality, this is when we know what we're doing. This is when the wisdom has kicked in. This is when we have so much lived experience to share. And this is when we have the confidence to really give a F about what anybody else thinks, and that we know what needs to be put out into the world. So you can definitely find me there. And I'm always on Instagram, not always. At night, I'm on Instagram, but my Instagram is AnaFlores_me.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. All right, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation, Anna. I've really enjoyed it with you today.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you so much for the lovely connections on Substack. I keep inviting everybody I can, and I know that really is looking to go deep to jump on Substack and to really expand their friendships and their community. And you are one of those gifts that Substack has given me.
Thank you.